I just watched the Shawn interview with Charlie Kirk's head of security, and here are some takeaways. And some questions. First of all, this was Charlie's contracted security detail who had been with him for multiple years, and it seemed to have a lot of capable guys, including former Navy SEALs, snipers, and all the rest. The man who was interviewed, Brian Harpole, seems to be sincere and credible. To me, the biggest takeaway from the interview was that there was a very narrow line of sight that this guy could have taken, and the fact that it could be 7 to 10 maybe feet wide where that shot could have actually been made, and that's it. Meaning the amount of time that he was on the roof is very important because he would have had to find that exact spot, which lends credibility to the idea that this was rehearsed. If it was rehearsed, that means there should be additional footage of him going to that spot beforehand. And it doesn't make sense why he'd be wearing dark clothing on a white roof in broad daylight. He also said the security detail was very aware that there was 180 degrees of open sight visible to where Charlie was sitting before the event even started, and that they identified this as a huge security risk, and that the security detail was unable to change the location of the event, that it was forced that they go to that spot. Other reports have suggested that this was originally scheduled to be inside, so who made the final call that that needed to be the spot? He also said that the security detail informed the campus security that there was a vulnerability on that open rooftop and that anyone could just jump over and enter this exact spot where the guy supposedly was. They specifically outlined that location in advance. According to him, the chief of police was informed that that spot was vulnerable, and they said they would cover it, and then they didn't. If he produced evidence that he informed the chief of police that that area needed to be covered and it wasn't, why wasn't it covered? Who made that decision? He also said that he wanted to run drones to survey the site in advance, but they were also not allowed to do that by law, and that only the police could have, or the campus police. But they didn't. Who made that decision? He also said that they had meticulous plans for what would happen in the event of an evacuation and the necessity to go to a hospital. If that is the case, and they actually went to the further hospital, as some other people have suggested, why did they go to the further hospital if there were plans in advance that they knew where to go? And one detail that I happened to find strangest of all from the entire interview is that he said when they arrived at the hospital that they didn't know that they were coming. So with all the employees, all of the personnel, all of the security detail, all of the people that were there on the ground working that day, nobody called the hospital to tell him that they were coming there? How is that possible? And his set of security details seemed to be very thorough, that they even identified large rocks that were located behind where Charlie was sitting, and they secured that area specifically in advance in case somebody threw rocks down onto him. So if they were this meticulous about the placement of rocks, but they had identified this specific location that was a specific threat that didn't get covered, how is that possible? Now, I'm not blaming this guy because he seemed to be credible and forthcoming, but these are real questions. And perhaps one of the most perplexing questions of all, how was George Zinn there? And why? The timeline and coincidence of all these events and this very perfect, very meticulously placed, very narrow, under duress location brings up more questions than answers. And what seems most obvious to everyone is that a little bit more clarity and a little bit more trust in our institutions could come with just a little bit more revealing of how these questions could be answered ahead of time that won't jeopardize the trial. That's the least we could ask for, and they should and could do it.